Right.
Okay, recording's on.
Well, welcome everybody. It's great to see a crowd again here this session, and we're following on this session with our conversation that we started last week, which was about we called it Dr. Livingstone, I presume, um, and we were revisiting the UK-DRC shared history. We had some great presentations. We had Tim Gill, the author of the book on Stanley, which takes account of the most recent research materials available. He worked on that over the last 10 years, and he's very kindly allowing us to put the copy of his presentation onto the website. So the website is www.spanglefish.com/Black History. And there's a tab for each of the sessions that we've had so far. So after last week, we decided that this week we would carry on, particularly as we're going to in a moment or two be welcoming Chief Thomas, um, and that's great, and we'll be able to hear about the activities you've been involved in. So, Albert, I think you were talking um, about last week. Tell us what you thought about last week, Albert. Albert, are you there? No. Well, while we're waiting for Albert to appear again, then can I just welcome also Simon? Do you want to say hello to everyone?
Yeah, welcome everybody. It's good to continue this conversation. I thought last week was really, really interesting. Unfortunately, Luke, who was going to chat again, can't make it because of a dentist appointment. But yes, so yeah, it was a great, very interesting conversation. We had really good feedback from. It is
Well,
now
that's
live on our YouTube channel.
yeah, that's great. And I think it's really good that we brought together the work of Belong Nottingham and also the work of Norbert and his other colleagues. So today we've got an opportunity to continue this discussion. So I think without any more ado, if we can talk with you, Chief Thomas Bikebi. It's quite some time since we've had an opportunity to talk. We
Yes.
met in Colwyn Bay when you came to visit on one of your visits,
Mm.
um, to respect the lives of the Congolese boys who sadly passed away when they were in Wales. And that was an amazing event. And on the other occasions when I met with you, I was just so impressed by um, your deep understanding of the history and the links with the Congo Institute. So, Chief Thomas, can I pass over to you then, and please tell us whatever it is you're going to focus on today.
Thank you so much, Liz. And I would like to take this opportunity to say sorry for everybody as I missed the last Zoom meeting.
No
Uh,
problem.
yes, my name is Chief Thomas Bikebi from Congo. I'm the chairman of Global Connection International, uh, which used to be Global Connection Build a Vision. Now the new name is Global Connection International. This organization was born out of the vision that we would create a new leadership of change and how we can connect communities for peace and development, particularly for the work that we are doing about the forgotten heritage issue link between the Congo and Britain, which we started in 1999. We organized from 1999 to 2008, 4 trips with the Congolese community to Pilbright in Surrey to visit the grave of Henry Morton Stanley. In 2008, I think one of the last trip in 2008, we did a program with BBC 4, Radio 4, with Angus Crawford. And when that program went on Radio 4, William Stanley got that program, and he tried to persuade the journalist, the BBC journalist, Angus Crawford, who gave him my email. And on the 2nd December 2008, I received an email from William Stanley, so the great-great-grandson of Stanley, who was really surprised to see people talking positively about Stanley. He couldn't believe. Yes, I got his email, which he wrote to me on the 2nd December 2008. If you can see on that link that I sent to you, the dead explorer fighting knife and gun crime. So we took Henry Morton Stanley as a model to inspire the young people. If you see the struggle.
Did you want to show that picture, Chief Thomas, now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Simon, if we could see the picture that Chief Thomas shared. There we are, right. So we've got an identity card there. Don't know if you can make it full screen, Simon, that would be, oh, right, thank you. Thank you. So this, this gentleman is the grandson, did you say, Chief Thomas?
So what I'm saying before the picture, I'm saying about the great-great-grandson of Henry Morton Stanley.
All right. So was he, can I just ask one of our other participants, Chief Thomas, Helen, Helen's written about the wife of Henry Morton Stanley. So they obviously had children.
He adopted a child.
Right.
Had adopted child. So the
right.
great-grandson of Henry Morton Stanley, his name is William Stanley.
Right.
The guy is still alive.
Oh, great.
Yes.
That's wonderful. Have you been in touch with him lately?
Yeah. Even the last time in 2016, when I went to the Congo to restore the statue of Henry Morton Stanley, I sent him all the pictures and everything.
Wonderful.
Before I can travel to the Congo in 2016, we had some email conversation with him, and he couldn't even believe that I could achieve that. Because as you may know that when the Congo totalized 50th anniversary of independence, the British embassy tried to restore that statue in the Congo Museum in Kinshasa. But the opposition come to the British newspapers to say that they cannot allow the British embassy to do that. So the British taxpayers, money cannot spend to the man who had a blood with his hand. That was, that stopped the British embassy to do that project. And I decided to take that project on board and defend it up to 2016 with the contribution of Tim Gill, Kenzler Gwyneth, friend of Stanley, the Congolese embassy, we tried to do a fundraising, and I went back to the Congo to restore the monument of Henry Morton Stanley, which was demolished by the dictator Mobutu, I think 45 years ago. And that statue is back now in the Congo.
Right. So have you got photographs of that?
Yes, I've got photographs of that.
Well, we're going to share those on another occasion then, aren't we? That's great. So I've confused things, I'm afraid, Chief Thomas, because I'd asked Simon to show us an identity card and a photograph of another gentleman, and this gentleman's first name is Stanley. So who is this gentleman?
This gentleman is a great son of Ndonzwa Ulenvo. Ndonzwa Ulenvo came to Britain in 1881. He came to translate the Bible, which was in a Latin language, and Kikongo, which is a Congolese language. So they brought him here in England by the British Missionary Society, so that guy can translate that Bible to Kikongo and English.
Right.
In 1881.
Right.
That guy was the best friend of Henry Morton Stanley.
Right. Okay.
Up to
so
now.
That's where the link comes.
Yeah, yeah. Up to now, there is so many people from Ndonzwa Ulemvo's family who got Stanley's name.
Really?
Like, yes. I found it last year. I traveled to the Congo and I went to Congo Central in the west part of the Congo to do my research about the place where Henry Morton Stanley was living in the Congo Central. And I tried to talk to the people and to find out what they know about the history of Henry Morton Stanley. Then I went to visit a place where they're supposed to put, in French, we call it stele, like a small statue for Henry Morton Stanley. But that project was stopped. And people were telling me about the good thing that Henry Morton Stanley did in that area. And they showed me the family of Ndonzwa Ulemvo, the statue as well. I'm going to post it to you, and you are going to see the unfinished project of statue of Henry Morton Stanley, which is still in that place. And that is our next project to go to finish that project. And they show me the family. I found out that in that family, there are more than 5 people called Stanley. And some of them, they are in Europe, in France and Belgium. And this man is in the Kinshasa. He sent me the picture yesterday, and I asked him the permission. He said that, okay, people are not going to believe that. Let me give them my ID so that they can see. And that is one of the pieces of GISCO that we are asking to telling people, if Henry Morton Stanley was a bad man, how come people in some of the villages, they call themselves Stanley?
Yeah.
But if you go back in the Congo now, you are not going to see no one called Leopold II. No one.
Oh, that's
no one, because
trying, yeah.
So for them, that was a very bad boy.
I think that's really, really interesting. Really interesting.
And I think we are planning, I don't know how this pandemic is going to restrict us by next week. On the 10th of May, we are going to do a celebration. Maybe it's going to be in Kinshasa to celebrate the 4th anniversary the restoration of Henry Morton Stanley statue in Kinshasa, what we did in 2016. So up to now, it's going to totalize 4 years now.
That's fabulous.
To bring on board this family to make the testimony about the great-great-grandfather, and to ask them how they did cut the name of Henry Morton Stanley.
Right.
Yeah.
It would be really interesting. I'm just checking in my diary, seeing what day of the week the 4th of May is next year. It's a Tuesday.
The 10th
So maybe
the 10th of May.
10th of May. Sorry, I apologize.
Because
10th of May.
Died on the 10th of May, 1904.
All right. Okay. Well, maybe we'll make the session that we have on the or we can do something on both sessions on Friday the 7th and Friday the 14th. We can find out what's going to happen, and then we'll find out what actually happened on the day. So that's fabulous, because I think this is an important story, a very important story to follow up. The other story you were telling me, Thomas, that you were working on was that about the revival of the African Institute cricket team. Now, I managed to miss out on what you were doing about all of this, but then eventually everybody missed out on it because it wasn't able to go ahead. But you were telling me that the African Institute, this place that was created by Reverend William Hughes, actually some of the African students made up the first Black African cricket team in the world.
In the world.
And that you tried to revive it. Tell us what you did.
Yes, in 2013, I went to the Congo. As you know that, you might know that Congo, we don't play cricket in the Congo.
Right.
When we found out that our ancestors, who were the students in the Congo Institute, were playing cricket, and
right.
they were the first cricketer, the African cricketer in the world. That's why we decided to go to introduce cricket in the Congo.
That's fantastic.
I traveled with a friend of mine, a white man, Quinton Benningfield.
Yeah.
British. We went to the Congo to introduce that sport for the memory of our ancestors.
Yes.
That sport doesn't exist in the Congo on that time. So we introduced cricket in the Congo, and up to now, we are trying to build a federation for the first federation of cricket in the Congo.
That's fantastic.
In 2018, we came across about the program which was which is still running by Street Child United. They do organize a World Cup for children, and we seized that opportunity to make our application, to send our application to them to participate to the first Cricket World Cup in London, which was organized in May last year. And our team was really accepted because of that historical side. As in the Congo, we don't have any cricket team, just we are doing it occasionally. And as we, on our, I can say, on our application, we try to say about the life of Nkanza and Kinkasa, who came with William Hughes in 1885. Those children, I can say, they can be qualified as street children.
Yes.
If you see what a parent can accept his child, 8 years old and 11 years old, to travel with an stranger to a country that you don't know? That is really unacceptable. And those two boys, they were not slaves, no. And I think Nkanza was like working in one of the chief or slave or something like that, who had a chance to be taken by William Hughes. So William Hughes was taking care of that boy and took them here in England. So we were following the life of those two boys who came to this country without their biological parent. And we say, this is an example of those three children in the Congo. And those two young boys who was like, what can I say? That name is coming just in French, élément catalyseur. How can I say?
We'll translate.
Yes, that allowed William Hughes to create the Congo Institute. And as we had that inspiration, that Congo Institute, we follow the history. They were the first cricketers. And we told the organizer of the Cricket World Cup, no, Congo should be there because the Congo House was the first Black African cricket club. And on that day, on that conference, no one was believing what I was saying. And they did their research, they found that what I was saying was true. And we had the chance to get to the World Cup. So up to now, we have now the team of young street children in the Congo playing cricket.
Fantastic. That's just amazing. Okay, thanks very much. Oh, so thanks very much, Thomas, for telling us about that. That's really, really great. Thank you. Yeah. And I just wondered, we've got with us Helen Papworth, and Helen wrote the book, The Butterfly and the Bee, which is about Henry Morton Stanley's wife, Dorothy.
Dorothy.
So are you there, Helen?
I am, yes. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Thank you very much indeed. So Helen, would you like to comment or ask Chief Thomas anything about what he's been talking about, or tell us a little bit about your writing?
Well, first of all, I remember Chief Thomas from meeting him in Denbigh 4 years ago, wasn't it? Yeah. And because I had the opportunity to drive in the ambassador's car up to the castle. And what I learned then from people like Chief Thomas and Norbert, and that was the fact that Stanley was venerated in the Congo. And, you know, to me, that was a really, good sign, because certainly in North Wales, what I'd found was that he had the Marmite factor. People either loved him or hated him. And as I researched his wife, I obviously had to do a lot of research into Stanley. And the place I did most of the research was in Tervuren, which was in King Leopold's museum, where there is the Stanley Archive. And, the information I found about Stanley from reading his books about his expeditions, from reading the letters between him and Dorothy, who became his wife, and everything I kind of discovered about Stanley gave a different picture to the picture that some people had told me about him being a slaver. There was no way he could be a slaver. First of all, it was a long time after Britain had actually eradicated slavery, but he was also trying to eradicate slavery in East Africa. And although he actually employed a slave, Tipu Tib, on a couple of expeditions, it was more because he needed the support of more porters than he actually condoned slavery. And in the last expedition, between 1886 and 1890, the reason he employed this slaver was to try and get him to stop slavery by offering him certain concessions. So the fact, that he was venerated by people generations later in the Congo kind of serves this. And I hope that information is passed on to the people who are doing the studies in Wales on people who have been, linked with slavery, because this information doesn't come across. I'd named the book The Butterfly and the Bee, and I'd forgotten why I'd named it that, but I've just found the introduction to my book where I've written, there are butterflies and bees in the world. The butterflies like to play amid the flowers. I am content to belong to the bee class. And that was Dorothy quoting her husband, Stanley, in the biography that she wrote about him, which was published after his death. And Dorothy was complete opposite. She was definitely the butterfly. She wanted to play amidst the flowers. She was a socialite. She was an artist. She was a children's writer, and the complete opposite to Stanley. And although they didn't actually get together for quite a while, it was after he came back from his final expedition that she actually decided that he was going to be her husband, and she proposed to him. And he'd already proposed to her 5 years earlier, and she turned him down. And eventually he gave in and they got married. They didn't actually have children of their own. They adopted a child. They adopted Denzel. Yeah. And he was very, very close to Stanley until his death in 1904. Denzel went on to adopt another child. And I believe that William is probably the child of the adopted grandson of Stanley, but obviously takes the name. So I think that's as much as I can offer at the moment.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Helen, and apologies for kind of putting you on the spot today, but it just seemed that it would be a good time to talk about your book and to talk about Henry Morton Stanley's wife, Dorothy Tennant. It's really interesting, and that's an interesting quote that you got the title of the book from. Fascinating by that. So Thomas, thank you very much indeed for the contribution that you've made. Thomas, is there anything that you want to comment on or to add to what Helen said?
No, for what Helen said, that I don't have any comment, as I think for us is better, like what we are saying. The history had three sides: your side, my side, and the truth. If you see what happened to Henry Morton Stanley history, you are going to see other people's side and other people's side, but the truth remains the truth. And I always say to the people, the truth is a very stubborn boy. So you cannot even convince the truth to become untrue. And now we are seeing what is coming on table about Henry Morton Stanley. I'm very proud of Helen. So we can go up to Henry Morton Stanley's wife history to dig down so that we can know the person that we are defending. And I'm very proud of Helen. I think, how can we get your book? Is it on Amazon? Okay.
Yes, she's nodding. So Helen's book, The Butterfly and the Bee, is on Amazon, and there's also a very generous amount of it, which you're able to read as a sample. You can do that on Amazon. So that's all I've managed to do so far. So I'm going to get to the library here now. They're open in Australia, and I'll be able to read that story. But fascinating. One of the things that's come through in our Black History Lunchtime conversations is how important authors are. And we've also separately started a Black History book club. and we're going to develop that more in the new year. So Helen, we'd certainly like you to talk to us then. And it was fascinating last week to have Tim Gill speak with us. So that was great. Now, thank you ever so much, Chief Thomas. That was great, and we're going to follow this up, and we'll get to the point where we've got a version of the story that is the truth, that maybe includes my side and your side, or your side and my side, or however you said. But it is really important because in Wales, there is North Wales, there are so many arguments about whether we should respect the son born in Denbigh. So Gwyneth, would you like to, I know you're recuperating, but is there anything that you would like to add at the moment, Gwyneth?
Excuse me, yes. Just to comment on the adopted son, Denzil. And he adopted Denzil. I think it was the son of one of his nieces. So he was a blood relation, and a local historian made the connection. They called him Denzil because Den for Denbigh, and Zil, the boy's mother, was called Elizabeth, Liz. So so it was a blood relation that he adopted.
Right, that's really interesting. So it would be interesting. Obviously, Chief Thomas was saying that he's been in communication with William, Stanley's great grandson or grandson. Not sure how far down we are. So so that's fascinating. So Gwyneth, where are things at now in Denbigh as regards to the statue, and people saying perhaps the statue is inappropriate, or people saying that the statue is fully appropriate? Where are we at with the discussions?
They're with the town council at the moment. The town council are organising a public consultation in around June, I think. And it's for local people to have their say whether the statue should remain where it is, or whether it should be removed and put in a museum or somewhere else, or whether it should be got rid of. So there's a little working party amongst the town councillors for this. But a fortnight ago, the Welsh Government published a list of all the statues in Wales and place names to do with Africa. And I was asked by the BBC to make a comment, and I was interviewed. And it was sad, really, when I looked at the news item that Stanley was included amongst slave owners. And this is where it becomes difficult. And as Chief Thomas has said, getting the truth, getting the facts. And Stanley, of course, condemned slavery, but it's just lazy, sloppy journalism that'll just lump it all together. And this is what we have to contend with.
Thank you, Gwyneth, for that. That's really interesting. I'm just thinking about how we may be able to help. Norbert, have you got any ideas on how this could be moved forward? Norbert's been involved in bringing people together for quite some time now. I saw you there earlier, Norbert. Are you still online? No, Norbert was there briefly, so maybe he's lost his connection. So we can come back to Norbert on that. Now, next week, we're going to be reviewing the themes that we've developed during these lunchtime conversations. And this is a very, very strong theme and something that we'll want to move forward into the new year. Simon, I know you're going to perhaps tell us a little bit about what you're going to be doing, but perhaps before that, we could also now look at Uganda and see Ricardo.
Hello.
Hi, Ricardo, would you like to tell us about Stanley's role in Uganda? Because that's something that we've not heard about yet.
Yes, thank you, Liz. I am happy to
Thank
be
you.
here. Do you hear me?
Yes, fine, thank you.
Yes, I am very happy to be here to share with you what we know about Stanley in Uganda. Firstly, I am a member of an organization which is called Shared Heritage and Parenting and Mentoria, in short, SHAPA. It is based here in the UK, and one of the purposes of that organization is to promote our shared heritage, Ugandans and the British people. And Stanley is one of the people whom we consider to be part of our heritage. As I said, I would like this subject, I have called it the Ugandan story about Stanley's mission in Uganda. Maybe briefly, I can talk about Uganda. Uganda was a British protectorate. We became a British protectorate in 1894. And in 1962, we got independence. And Stanley is one of the 5 people whom we consider to be the co-founders of Uganda, because he played a very, very big role in the project of finding Uganda. Stanley arrived in Uganda in 1875 in April, and he met the king of Buganda Kingdom. Buganda is synonymous with Uganda at certain times.
Mm-hmm.
And he spent some time with the king. He became a friend of the king, who was called King Mutesa the First. During his stay in the palace, he introduced Christianity to Uganda. Although the Christian churches don't talk about him as one of the people who introduced Christianity, but the truth is, when he came, oh my God.
Oops. Okay, I think we've got a problem with the connectivity there. Okay, but we'll come back to Ricardo when we've got the connectivity problem sorted out. Norbert, are you back now? Oh, so Norbert for a quick moment there.
No, I can see Norbert seems to be in a moving vehicle. Yeah.
Right, Norbert. All right, Norbert. Are you able to talk or not? Are you on the bus, on the train? Such are the times when we have to wear our masks even when we come on Zoom. Are you okay, Norbert? We won't ask you to talk, Norbert. We'll just recognise that you're there and we'll follow that up. Right, just while we're waiting for Ricardo to get his connectivity sorted out, it's really a great delight to see you from Just University, to see Professor Sati joining us. Professor Sati, have you had done much research into the stories in Uganda and the Congo about Henry Morton Stanley, or is this not a story that you followed up to date?
Not really quite deep. I only know Stanley as an explorer in East Africa, and someone who was sent to, or who thought he was going to find David Livingstone. Eventually became someone who moved about much of East Africa and is connected with the so-called discovery of certain lakes and certain parts of East Africa. Beyond that, I lump Stanley, Livingstone, link Richard Burton, and Mungo Park as people who belong to the same genre, as people who were the founders of, or who laid the foundation stone of colonization in Africa. So we historians, conservative historians, study Stanley and his people as the progenitors or the precursors of colonialism by exposing to Europe these parts of Africa that were not known, because people like Hegel, people like Trevor Roper, and earlier Europeans had considered Africa a dark continent. And by darkness, they meant that there was no knowledge about sub-Saharan Africa. And so much of this dark continent is taught in African historiography, and so much of African historiography is trying to debunk or actually to refute the claim that Africa was indeed a dark continent, because darkness meant that nothing existed. It was like void. But for Africanists, people live in these places, people carried out their activities in these places. But if Europeans did not know them, that is their problem. It is not the problems of Africans to now say that they didn't exist. So, and that links me up with what I heard earlier from the discussion between Helen and Thomas about what exactly is truth. For we historians, truth is a very relative term. Just as you have objective history is very relative. It depends on who is saying it, why he's saying it, and what perspective the person is coming from. So this is why Marxists believe that they are on the side of truth, because they claim to be speaking for the masses. But then conservatives will say, no, you are dividing society. So at each moment, truth remains relative. And so the perspective of Africans about Stanley, about Livingstone and the explorers of the period is the Africanist perspective. Europeans have their own perspective. Every country has its own perspective, and everyone is entitled to their opinion.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's so true. Thank you very much indeed, Professor Sati. That's really a helpful perspective. And this is one of the things that we're trying to do, is to introduce an African perspective as opposed to always a European perspective on looking at these histories. So thank you very much. Now, Ricardo, I think you're back with us now. Ricardo?
If I can just add something, Liz, if you can.
Yeah.
Are you off the bus?
He's on the bus. He's disappeared again.
Oh, yeah.
It's fun today, I tell you. Ricardo, can you hear me?
Hello? Hello?
Nobody's back.
Yeah, sorry, really. My
Right,
connection.
quick, Norbert, while we can hear you, tell us.
Yeah. I say, yeah, it's important to have this African
I think it's trying to, yes.
But, you know, we really, what we understand and what we understood and what we discover that the scholars, the politicians.
Norbert, we're going to have to pick you up again later when you're actually in a stable place, Norbert.
Yeah, okay.
Norbert, we'll pick you up later. Let Ricardo finish his presentation, please, Norbert. Okay, okay, so have we got Ricardo now? Ricardo, how's your audio? Is it working? Ricardo, can you hear me now? Ricardo? I can see you, Ricardo. Now you've disappeared again. Oh no, you're back again. Ricardo, can you hear me?
Yeah, he's connecting. It looks like he's back now.
Right, okay. Ricardo, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Sorry. Yes.
Quite all right. Just carry on where you were, Ricardo. Okay.
Yes, I was saying that Stanley came to Uganda, and he's the one who introduced Christianity. When he came, already in the palace, there were some Arabs who had introduced Islam. When he came, he tried to convert the king. The king accepted to become a Christian, but he was not baptized. What he did was to convince the king, wanted very much to make a kind of an alliance with the British government. And Stanley, after talking to the king about Christianity and about how Uganda would be helped, so that Uganda would be the stepping stone to help Africa, Stanley wrote a letter in collaboration with the king. That's a very, very great letter. As far as Ugandans are concerned, that letter is the starting point of opening the doors of Uganda to Europe. That letter was published. What Stanley did was to give it to a certain Frenchman who had come to the kingdom, and so that he could deliver it to Gordon, who was a governor somewhere in Sudan, so that it could be delivered to the UK. Eventually, it is a long story. It was delivered to the UK, and it was published in the Daily Telegraph and another paper, American paper, asking for missionaries to go to Uganda, to evangelize Uganda, to bring Western education, to build roads. That letter, after its publication, there were missionaries who decided to come to Uganda, the Church Missionary Society. At the time, they were in the US. That was a society which was trying to send missionaries to other parts of the world. And after that letter, the first missionaries went to Uganda in 1876. And that's the Church Missionary Society, which represented the Church of England. In 1879, the Society of a Catholic society called Missionaries of Africa, or White Fathers, also went to Uganda. They started also their work. Eventually, we had problems in Uganda, religious conflict, Muslim, Catholics, and Anglicans. And that became one of the reasons why Stanley thought that, is one of the people who thought that Uganda had to be helped to stop those religious wars, people killing each other. And one of the ways to do that was to start advocating for a protectorate. And if later on, other people were involved, like Gerard Porto, who was a commissioner in East Africa, somewhere in Zanzibar, but Uganda was part of East Africa. So the governor, Gerard Porto, was sent to Uganda and on a mission to see how Uganda would be helped. Other key people who were involved personally was Lord Rosebery, who later became a prime minister in the UK. Stanley, with Lord Rosebery, also was personally involved. Gerard Porto Mutesa, the king, and another king who came later called Mwanga. Those are the 5 people who are considered, whom we consider, we Ugandans, to be the co-founders of Uganda. Eventually, Uganda became a protectorate, as I said, in 1894, and was developed up to 1962 when we got independence. Now, when Stanley was in Uganda, in the writings we have different books. One book which was written by Stanley, Through the Darker Continent, and the other books which have been written by Tim Gill. All of those books capture this story that Stanley participated in building Uganda, and people who say that Stanley was a slaver, it's not true, because when Stanley advocated for the missionaries to go to Uganda, one of the objectives which is clarified, which is written in different books, was that he wanted Uganda to be a stepping stone to fight against kind of slavery. Slavery had been abolished formally, but it was still going on in East Africa. And Stanley feared that if Uganda became part of Egypt, because Khedive Ismail, the ruler of Egypt, was trying to take over Uganda. And if Stanley thought that if Uganda was taken over by Egypt, slavery would flourish in the whole region there, in Uganda, in Congo, in Sudan. His idea to stop that was to make sure that Uganda is taken over by, first of all, missionaries come, and eventually Uganda would become part of Britain, so that slavery would not flourish in that region. That is very well documented in different books. And that's the reason, one of the reasons why Stanley fought hard to see to it that Uganda becomes a sort of a place where Britain would have some kind of influence. Now, we Ugandans, Stanley, when you go to Uganda, has been named different place, there is a place called, a mountain called Mount Stanley. We have Rwenzori Mountain, but there is a peak which is called Stanley. And some roads in Uganda are named after Stanley. And among the people of Uganda, they are very much aware that Stanley is one of the people who should be celebrated. Stanley named Uganda the Pearl of Africa. Uganda has got a petty name. Another name of Uganda is the Pearl of Africa. And that name makes all Ugandans proud. And in the Ugandan anthem, the last part of the Ugandan anthem says or refers to Uganda as the Pearl of Africa. And the person who named Uganda the Pearl of Africa, the first man who called Uganda Pearl of Africa was Stanley. Churchill later on, in 1907, he talked about Uganda as a Pearl of Africa, saying that, yes, indeed, it is true, Uganda is the Pearl of Africa. But Stanley is the man who named Uganda Pearl of Africa, and now Wherever you go in Uganda, those who promote tourism of Uganda, they use that name, Pearl of Africa. So I can say that briefly, Stanley is one of the co-founders of Uganda. Uganda is what she is partly because of Stanley, and Ugandans are proud of him. Thank you.
Ricardo, thank you so much, and thank you for making the effort to reconnect again so you could finish your presentation. That was really interesting. I wonder, Ricardo, I'm not sure if you've got notes there that you're reading from, that you're speaking to, but it would be really brilliant if you could, that was such a good summary. Would you be able to let us have a copy of that to post as we're collecting all the information? We've got something from Tim Gill. We'll talk to Helen about the contribution she can make. Thomas, I'm sure, will contribute as well, and Norbert too. Would that be possible, Ricardo?
Yes, I will do that. Thank you.
I would be very grateful, and I think that would really help, because I think in the new year we need to refocus on this story again, pulling together all the strands that we've got so far and seeing if there's any other strands that we need. Helen's just put a message, Ricardo, to say that she knows that Stanley's wife, Dorothy Tennant, painted a portrait of King Mutesa,
yes,
of Uganda, from a photograph that was owned by Stanley. Have you seen that painting?
Yes, very much so. We are very proud of that picture. That's the only picture we have which shows Mutesa with his chiefs. So we are very proud of that picture. Yes, thank you, Helen.
Oh, that's wonderful. So that's linked all that up together. So we need to find a photograph of that picture as well, so that we can look at that. That would be really helpful. Right, Norbert, you're back, and so thank you so much, Ricardo. Thank you very, very much indeed for that presentation. So Norbert is now stable. I'm not sure what part of the planet you're on at the moment, Norbert, but anyway, you seem to be stable. So over to you, Norbert.
Yeah, no, I want just to add my voice to whatever, everything we just learned today. Very, very interesting talking and topics. I want just to say something, there is what I call...
No, but I'm finding it a bit difficult to hear you.
Yeah, it's
I don't
okay
know.
Now? Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
better now, yeah. Shout up.
So there is what I call myself the mouses and the cat game between the scholars, between the storytelling from the West and the East.
Yes.
From the North and the South. And in Africa, most of the time, we keep laughing ourselves. For example, now, when Trump was talking about America first, America first, America first, African people, we keep laughing. We say, how this guy couldn't understand that as African, we will say also African first, Black people first, Congo first, and whatever. So coming in the West, first, during the colonization, we didn't have the right pictures of the relationship between Europeans and the white people. We thought, our ancestors thought that they were all from one party, from one religion. They got one belief, one faith, one philosophic thinking and whatever. It was not until the Second War, then when the fighter came back in Africa, that they started explaining to people, no, those guys in their own countries, they fight each other. They don't have the same voice. They don't have the same party. And even in Congo, we learned that Belgium, who came in Congo, you got the Dutch and the Wallon. And that we thought, the Congolese thought that the Dutch was one of the dialects in Belgium, while really there was also speaking French, and they learn that both languages are very, very different, and both people, they are not the same. So what I wanted to say, coming in the West, we didn't have the right picture of, for example, what the difference between Welsh, English, Scottish, and Irish. Living here, we understood and we understand that people, they don't belong to the same political party. They don't have the same faith. They don't have the same way of thinking. And that most of the time they will use African history, to label us or to let us, adopt it to what they think, while really all those thinking are connected to their own faith or to their own political party. And we just learn, that Henri Morton Stanley, when he came back from the Congo, when really some scholars, they learned that he was a Welshman, they started really, they decided not to believe it to him. And living in Welsh also, we understand now that Welsh have, people, they belong to a lot of parties. And sometimes it's according to their political party that they will influence also their way of thinking. And so we need to be very, very careful as African to avoid, people to tell us that we want to tell you your stories in the way the way we understand it. And the clashes when journalists and the scholar, they go in Congo, they are surprising when they got in a debate with a Congolese historian. When those historians, they tell them our side of Henri Morton Stanley stories. So they want to make us swallow their side of Henri Morton Stanley, especially after the book of Adan Ochai. They want us to believe that what Adan Ochai writes, this is the Bible about Stanley's story. And when we tell them no, for example, I wrote this little book about the evangelization in my area where I was born. And you got in oral history where the people, they keep telling to their son and grandson about Stanley is different with what we learn from Adan or Child book. So, of course, the chance we have now is to put those things in a balance. And also, we have also our storytellers, we have also our historians, we have also our part of a story, and this need to be taken account. And especially now, everyone understand now that the oral history couldn't be put in the bin just because it's a oral history. In the west of Africa, in Africa, we got the job of the griot and the storytelling, who keep the memories, since, you know, so this is really the big problem. So it's interesting where we are living now is to put all those things in a balance. But we need, and this is our fight, to make understanding to our European, British, white scholars, storytellers, that we have a part of story to tell about Stanley, because Stanley live also in our country. So you need to avoid to tell us what you think that Stanley did in our country, and listen to us also. We will tell you what we learned from our ancestors who met remote on Stanley when he came there. So this is, and this voice need to be heard. I said last time. Now, for example, they will put the Black history in the Welsh curriculum. I'm asking myself, will it be only the British connection, Black history, or they will put also about the Congo Kingdom history, where really the slave trade starts, is one of the countries who suffer about the slave trade and the colonization. Will they put this part of history, or we will just learn about Nigeria, about Ghana, about Sierra Leone, about South Africa? But we will probably have a big vacuum about what happened in Congo Brazzaville, in Angola, in Mozambique, in other country which wasn't colonized by British. So please, this is a job we need to do, is to listen to each other's, to open our brain, to open our eyes, and our ears, and then that will help us to move forward.
Norbert, thank you so much. Again, you know, such wise words, Norbert, and putting it clearly that, that it's so important that African storytellers, African historians, that white people listen and take note. Now, I spoke to Professor Charlotte Williams, who's also in Australia here, court, and she is leading the team, the committee that's looking at the Welsh Black history and the Welsh curriculum. Unfortunately, here in Australia, it's quite late at night now, about midnight, and she's not very happy about coming on and making a presentation at this time of night. So what I'm thinking, Norbert, when we've refined and we've got the papers, I'll come to you, Sati, next. When we've refined the papers a little, and the discussions that we're having, if we have a special Zoom session, which is earlier in your morning, like about 9 o'clock, that would be, let me just check. That would be 8 o'clock in our evening. So that would be possible to actually ask Professor Charlotte Williams to join us at that time. And I think she might possibly make the effort to do that. If not, we'll have to make it even earlier, but still. So that could be a way, Norbert, that we share and emphasize the importance of this particular story. And maybe explain to Charlotte some of the other themes that we've been following. I haven't actually spoken to her for a few weeks, so she's not known about the different things that we've been doing. And I know she's been busy with other things. So if we can follow that up. Professor Sati Pwatchak.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Norbert.
Just a follow-up on what Norbert just said. He made very valid points. The issue, however, is the knowledge production and circulation in Africa or between the North and the South or across the globe, what people call the Matthew effect. The Matthew effect is talking about those who have more is given to them. So knowledge production is controlled, according to this theory, from the global North. And then it is not circulating to the global South because of local conditions and other conditions like poverty and so on. So, and the local knowledge production from Africa is also not so circulating to the global North. So if we can have a way to break this barrier or this blockage in the circulation of knowledge so that what is produced in Africa gets circulated globally, and what is produced in the global North gets circulated to Africa and to other parts of the world, then we are likely to be on the same page of understanding our historical trajectories. The North will understand what we're saying, and we will understand what they are saying. But so long as there is this blockage in the circulation of knowledge, so long as there is this difficulty in the circulation of knowledge, so long as there is a difficulty in the knowledge production, the African story is unlikely to break through in the international or in the global space. And what they know is likely to remain with them. And I'm always surprised. There was a time I was in Washington for a meeting, and I discovered that they seem to have more knowledge about Africa than Africans themselves, because they dedicate some people to collecting information about Africa. While here in Africa, we don't have people who are dedicated to collecting information about America. So they tend to, but it's because they have the money, they have the resources and so on. So the biggest problem is in the knowledge production and circulation. But I will be very happy if the African voices are inserted in the curriculum that is going to be launched. Is it in Wales or whatever? That will be very fantastic.
In Wales, yeah.
Yeah, in Wales. Then that will be very fantastic. And it begins with people like Norbert who can insert it there.
Right.
Yeah,
I think that's really interesting. Yeah, I agree with you, Simon. It's very, very important. If I could just say, thank you very much, Sati, Professor Sati. And I think that knowledge and the distribution, yes, it's quite clear that it's not balanced. I'm interested by the Matthew effect, but maybe we can talk about that again.
Okay.
But what I'd like to say is that one of our colleagues, one of the directors of Learning Links International, Ray Afolarin-Olayinka, he's got a PhD in knowledge management, and I'm really interested in this whole thing of knowledge management. I mean, he tends to deal with knowledge management in industry, but I've been talking to him about knowledge management and history, because there's a problem with it not being shared in a balanced way. And as you say, many European American academics study Africa, fascinated with Egypt, always on our television about that, but not the other way around. I mean, I think that there should be explorers and adventurers in Europe. And Yasser Safaro, who isn't joining us today, he's a classic who, a Jamaican who he discovered Wales. I keep telling him he needs to put a big Jamaican flag on the top of Snowdon, but why can't it be the other way around? That's all really interesting points. Now I can see that Morgan Delphinis has appeared on the screen. Is this because you want to contribute, Morgan? Yeah, unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear, Morgan.
How are you?
What I wanted to say, what I wanted to ensure in this discussion about knowledge, that issues such as minerals, land, and power were also included. Otherwise, we get into a discussion about Christians, Muslims, good guys, bad guys. When at the center of it all, including the issue of African leadership at the time, was a consideration about power, was a consideration about land, and the one we're left with in a deadly way in modern times are the question of minerals. So I think we need to include that question, because like this discussion about blacks and whites in America, I mean, it just leaves out of the discussion power, land, and money. And from my perspective, this is deliberate. If we do not discuss these discussions, we can spend more time and resources looking at things that do not really touch on the common lives of people, both black people and white people. I also think that there is a paucity of information, certainly looking at the Caribbean and West Africa, between our countries themselves. It is likely that you could get knowledge about Jamaica taught in the CXC curriculum, but my little island, despite 2 Nobel Prize winners, you may not get such a mention. Some of it has got to do with French and English, that in the end we were conquered for a longer time by the French. That kind of plays upon what the modern inheritors get of the Caribbean voice, as well as the African voice. Are the voices of African history, let's say, being discussed in Dakar, the same voices being discussed in Lagos and elsewhere in Africa? So I think long before we get to a channel between ourselves and Europeans, I think as Africans, Caribbeans, and others, we need to ask ourselves a fundamental question. Do we want historical information, particularly framed around power, jobs, money, and minerals, to be owned by the common people in Africa or the Caribbean? Or do we fear that if they get this knowledge, particularly as a lot of the African population is now young, they may become less governable to us? less amenable to our control. So to summarize, what I think is we need an honest black conversation about how do we discuss and pass information about our history within our countries and between our countries. That's not putting away the other points that have been made. I think every point I've heard has been very legitimate. But all I'm really asking for is let's look at it as the end point. Where does the knowledge go? Who is to own it? And what is to be done with it? And to do that, we need to reframe some of what we're trying around minerals and land in particular, because that's the key issue, and power, and how successful we have been in Africa and the Caribbean in passing information about ourselves across these boundaries. Or as we had in the Caribbean Federation, left with a scenario where Jamaica says, yeah, we have a little bauxite, you know, we can do, we've got no need for you riffraff. And as a consequence of that, the kind of pan-Caribbean knowledge, and I suspect the pan-African knowledge, is not advanced. It's not advanced at all. Or, as the Hausa people say, the camel's tail is a long way from the ground. Anyway, I talk too much. Thank you.
Dr. Dalfinis, you don't talk too much. You talk a lot of sense.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Professor Sati, do you want to come back on that?
Maybe on something different, but related to Stanley. The issue about the Western voices is that the conversations come from the perspective of where they are or where they were. And that is, one's perspective is framed by their own background and their own orientation. My friend taught me this a few moments ago, or just some months ago. He wrote the letter 3, the word 3, or the figure 3 on the ground. And he said, on one side, it looks like E. If you stand on the other side, it looks like M. If you stand on the other side, it looks like W. So what was he trying to put across? A European, a white person coming from Europe cannot write history from an African perspective unless the person has stayed in Africa. An African writing European history cannot write from the perspective of Europeans unless the person has stayed in Europe. So all these perspectives were framed by their backgrounds and their orientations. So why did the missionaries like Morton Stanley and their cohort describe Africans as pagans? Why did they describe us as primitive? Why did they describe us uncivilized, needing Christianity, commerce, and civilization? It was because when they came, Africans were receiving the backlash from about 300 to 400 years of slavery. But they seem not to have understood that. They just fixed African history in European civilization of the same period, not looking at African history and what had brought Africa to where it was. So the Africa they were describing at that time was not the Africa in the words of Catherine Vitrovich. Africa was not in its pristine qualities. It was a distorted Africa. And that distortion was partly on account of the slave trade. So when Africanists began to write African history, they said, no, we are not pagans. We are not barbarians. We are not headhunters. We are not pagans. Because paganism depicts non-religion. But our religions belong to what we call African traditional or African indigenous religions. But coming from a Christian perspective, anyone that is not a Christian must necessarily be a pagan. So, so to tell the African story that will make sense to everyone would need a global handshake across the Atlantic, intellectually. And much of what Morgan has said is really true. The conversation has not been framed around changing Africa, but around certain dominant narratives. And of course, as historians, I'm a historian, we always say every generation writes its history. As we're making this conversation, for Europeans, for Americans, the in thing is Black Lives Matter. For us in Africa, security is what matters. Black Lives Matter doesn't matter in Africa. So if you ask us to write something about Black Lives Matter, it is not the thing that is our challenge. Our own challenge is how to live in peace, how to go home and not be killed, how not to sleep on empty stomach. So these conversations will have to reach the point of convergence if knowledge production and circulation becomes more open, and the Matthew effect is like reduced. That is, we are now put on the same level of knowledge production and circulation. I don't see this coming in my own time. It may come in the time of my children.
Well, we can only work towards that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Barczak. Thank you very much indeed. Morgan, Simon wanted to respond to the points that you were making and maybe other points now. So I think I'll just pass over to you, Simon, to wrap this session up. But just to say it's been absolutely fantastic, and it's really galvanized me to think that we need to see what we can do in the new year to pull this together so that by the time it gets to June, you're able to tell the story from an African perspective in a way that we can circulate, certainly in North Wales, in those discussions for Gwynedd and for the sake of Stanley. Thank you, Simon.
Yeah, so yeah, I just wanted not to respond so much as to agree and maybe, suggest some other things. About what both Morgan and Sati were saying there is just really true and powerful, and something I've got experience of working in sustainability and working across Africa over the last 20 years. And one of the first things that struck me on my first trip to Africa was how many white Europeans or Americans, and in some cases Japanese, were sitting in nice cushy jobs in Africa, controlling the money, house full of servants, new satellite dish and computer every 3 years, and not really doing very much. And it's it's something so important that Europeans and others hand over that control, that knowledge, that money to the control of Africans. And I've seen a shift in some donors over time, particularly on projects I've worked with the Swiss government, who were the first to sort of agree that to have African-led teams. And over time, so I work very closely with an old colleague and friend from Benin in West Africa, and he's the team leader now. It used to be that I would be there as the team leader because they still felt they had to have a European there to do things. So to create those networks, we have to hand over some of that control. We may have the money, but that doesn't mean to say that we have the right knowledge, the right networks. It has to be handed back. It's a long process, perhaps, but I think we should aim to do it before the lives of our children. I'd like to see it in my time. And so, yeah, over the last sort of decades, there hasn't been a project which Sylvain hasn't been the lead on. And I think that's important. And yes, I can bring a perspective, but a lot of my jobs at the moment, we're doing a project for Fair Trade Africa. But my job there is to talk to the people here in Europe the people who use cocoa, because it's about West Africa, the people who use cotton, the people who use shea nut. But it's my colleagues in Africa, Silver and Dauda, who are speaking to the Africans. And fair trade, you know, to their credit, have decentralized, and it requires more people in the West, and it requires more universities to give up their collections to Africa, to pass over their research notes, to send more, you know, send more knowledge, send more, decentralize the campuses. So I think a lot of that. So I just wanted to agree with that, and so I won't, you know, I'll come back to Rainwright another time, and otherwise I want to say, yeah, another really interesting discussion, and thank you to everybody. And I will stop the recording now so that we can have, you know, any final chats